Hello. Hey up, what's up, what's good, bonjour. Welcome to the Any Given Runway show. I'm your host, Randall Carlton Brown. Any Given Runway celebrates the exploration of new cultures by highlighting some of the most artistic, athletic, tenacious, basically unique and interesting people in the world. Everyone has a story, each person a scholar. Welcome to Season 6. No lengthy preamble. Let's get right to it. Happy June. Today's guest is Lindsay Kent, a filmmaker and debut novelist whose new thriller, My Twin the Murderer, blends mystery, MK Ultra conspiracies, and altered states of consciousness. Lindsay's work explores the strange intersection of psychology and storytelling, and of course, counterculture. In today's episode, we talk about the psychedelic culture, the popularity and prominence of MK Ultra, creativity, filmmaking, and so much more. Absolute delight of a conversation, and you're going to love her. So let's go and bring on debut novelist, author of the new thriller, My Twin the Murderer, Lindsay Kent, and let's learn. Well, wonderful. I'm glad we connected. I finished reading the book. I make it a point to always read the books, which apparently is not normal. I guess a lot of the interviews you guys do is
not normal. Some people don't. Some people skim it. They read the blog or go on my Substack and yeah. So this is great. What'd you think? Weird.
Well,
right?
I always go in blind. I make it a point to always go in blind. So when they're at the police station and all the things starting to happen, I go, what am I reading? But I still refuse to even look. I didn't want to know anything about it. I just wanted to go through it. And so I'll dive right into the first questions about that because I was so surprised. And then there's the MK Ultra. There's so much going on at first, right off the bat. Where did all this inspiration come from? Because it's tremendous, right from the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah. So I kind of fell into this almost by accident, but it started because I am a huge book nerd. So Jack Kerouac, On the Road in college, that was my gateway into the beats. I read a lot of other beat stuff back then, and then I realized that Neal Cassady, who Dean Moriarty in On the Road is based on, this real guy, he drove the Further bus with Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters in 1964 that kind of ushered in the counterculture and the hippie movement. And I read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which is all about that trip. And I thought, wow, how amazing would it be to just be on that bus, just for 1 hour? How cool would that be? Because there are so many nodes to the culture today that can be traced back to this one group of people, this one trip. So flash forward to 2014, and a friend of mine sends me this Kickstarter campaign. Isn't this that bus that you're always talking about? And Zane Kesey, who is Ken Kesey's son, had planned on bringing the bus back on the road for a 50th anniversary tour where anyone in the world could donate and become a new Merry Prankster and get on 1 week of a 10-week tour. Help us get the bus back on the road and come and join us. I'm like, what? All of these freaks are going to come out and be a part of this trip. It's going to be amazing. And I later found out that he had offers from the History Channel and Vice and Nat Geo and all these people to actually film this trip, and he turned them all down, which worked in my favor because I just grabbed my camera, applied to be a neo prankster is what we call ourselves, and showed up on week 1 of the 10-week tour. Luckily, 2 other guys from Canada had the same idea. They actually had talked to Zane and gotten permission to do this. But that was my first feature-length documentary as co-director. And so I was on the bus for about 3 months, and then I went all around the country meeting all of the original pranksters, the people in that scene that were still alive. So Wavy Gravy, who was the MC of Woodstock. The bus went back to Woodstock. We went back to Millbrook, where Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert were studying LSD. And so I went and met Ken Babbs and George Walker, who are, still alive and amazing pranksters. And so that's how I kind of learned about MK Ultra. I learned about the history of the San Francisco counterculture because of this movie. And then I kind of became obsessed. I just kept learning more and more and more. I learned about a lot of the women that were really helpful in the late 1900s that didn't really get their due. And so I just started kind of falling into making more and more films, short films and documentaries about the psychedelic experience from a woman's point of view. So that's been about 10 years. And then I decided to write a thriller as a screenplay first. It was a pilot for a show. I just had it in my head, like, what if MK Ultra never ended? What totally bonkers things would they be doing today? And this is just the kind of thing that I want to see. I don't like, psychedelics are so weird. Like, we should have so many more movies and TV shows about this experience than we do. And so I wrote it as a pilot. I showed it to my twin sister, and she said, "Lindsay, you have to write this as a book. You know way too many things about this topic. You should just write it as a book." And I hemmed and hawed because I didn't think that I had it in me to do that. But after COVID, our industry kind of has been collapsing more and more every year, and my time has, freed up. And so I had the time. I sat down and I did it, and it's actually book one of four. So there's going to be three more books. I'm writing book two right now, which is My Twin the Witch, which hopefully will come out next year.
Well, keep going on that. Tell me about the premise of book one.
Of book one. So identical twins, Evelyn and Vivian, are estranged. They haven't spoken in a long time. They're basically polar opposites of each other when it comes to personality. They're thrust back together when their identical DNA is found at a crime scene. It is a murder scene, and the person that has been killed is the unrequited love interest of Evelyn, which she discovers at the precinct when she's face to face with her estranged twin, and they bicker and moan. We don't know who did it. Someone was there. One of them was there, and then the lights go out. No one knows what's going on. All of a sudden, there's people coming into the precinct. They kidnap the twins. They take them into the psychedelic underbelly of San Francisco, and the twins start to realize that they are part of a much larger story that involves government conspiracies, and there are some memory issues of the things that they have that happened to them in the past. And so it's a standard murder mystery with a little twist. It gets weirder and weirder as it goes along, but I won't spoil the ending for you, but it's a fun ride.
When I was reading it, I thought, yes, there are parts that's weird, but from what I know about you, you love that. You love weird.
Oh yeah, that's kind of my brand. So I think part of the reason that I'm so passionate about telling these types of stories, and now specifically doing it in fiction, is I see that the psychedelic renaissance is happening. I mean, Trump just signed an executive order to, fast track research with MDMA and ibogaine for people who are struggling with, PTSD. And all of this is really crucial and important when we're dealing with a massive mental health crisis. But the other side of that is psychedelics are weird, man. Like, tripping is weird. And people can do it and explore their own minds without having a mental illness. And so, to me, Timothy Leary and that whole group in the 1960s were like really trying to study them for mystical purposes and for scientific purposes. And Ken Kesey and the Pranksters were like, let's just see what happens when we dose the Kool-Aid. Like, ooh. And of course, there are caveats to doing something like that. But at the same time, the weirdness and the surrealness and the silliness has kind of gotten lost in the conversation a bit. It's become quite dry, the conversation around psychedelics, which to me is just hilarious because that is the exact opposite of what these tend to do. And so I wanted to add a bit more flavor into the stories that I'm telling, and also in the way that I just show up in the world. And so that's kind of become my brand. Yeah.
And there was two different times where you've mentioned my sister encouraged me, my friends encouraged me. You would take pride in being the freak of the friend group.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And what's funny is that on the Further bus, I think there were 200 people that donated and became technically neo-pranksters, but only 100 people showed up for the tour because you had to like pay your own way and take off, time, off of work. But I would say I was at the low end of that totem pole in terms of like, the freaks that showed up, who are now some of my dearest friends. But what I loved about being on the bus and kind of learning how to be a part of the counterculture, which I really hadn't been before, is that this is a group of people that if you just show up in whatever outlandish way that you want, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, you will be upheld as that. People are like, yeah, fuck yeah, go for it. Like, people are just stoked. And so living in a society that wants you to, fit into a box and behave a certain way, suddenly being in that type of bubble where you can just be whatever you really feel in you to be, I think is a really powerful thing. I wish that more people would experience it, even if it's just going to Burning Man or spending, a weekend at one of these amazing festivals all around the world. Just the experience of just decorating yourself, expressing yourself, and then being upheld as that by strangers is a super powerful, potent thing. Yeah, and I encourage anyone to try it at least once because it's awesome.
Why did you decide to have the two twins have completely polar opposite perceptions on the way they view the world?
Yes, so this is actually based on my life with my twin. I am an identical twin. At one point in our existence, we were one thing. And now at 41, we have some things in common, but mostly we are very different people. We have very different attitudes and beliefs. And it's fascinating to me that at one point we were the same thing, and now we are these very different people with very different viewpoints and attitudes about the world. And the biggest thing that I want to dive into, that I am diving into in this book series, is the concept of duality. Because what the psychedelic experience has taught me, I think more than anything else, is that you can't have light without dark. You can't embrace the parts of yourself that you love without accepting and embracing the parts that maybe you are not so fond of. It's still a part of you, right? And there is a level of peace on the other side of that everyone should have access to. But we like to look at things as good and bad, right and wrong. And that's just not the world that we actually live in. That's my experience. And so creating twins who really can't stand each other, but in reality trigger that thing in each other, because within them is that part of themselves that they're trying to hide and they don't want people to know, but is like mirrored in this other person, this walking, talking mirror of them. And so, with twins, it's like they can say the thing that will really, really hurt the other one, but also they can be the one to remind each other of the power that they have within them as well. And so I think that's just such a fun, layered relationship to explore. That's like that really embodies the concept of duality really well. I have a blast. Vivian's a lot easier to write than Evelyn. I have a little bit of Evelyn in me. I also have OCD. But Vivian is so much my sister. And so I just have such a blast writing that character. It's my favorite.
There seemed to be an underlying theme of not knowing oneself and also not knowing your family, and how conflicting memories and pieces of memories, like, I remember this about my father, but was that true? And you start to have your own self-doubt about your own history of what you think you know. Why was that an important theme you wanted to include?
Absolutely. So memory has been something that has fascinated me since I was a kid. For example, my sister and I both have memories from our childhood that could have only happened to one of us, but we both remember it happening to us. So like she thinks it happened to her, I think it happened to me. It could have, but it definitely only happened to one. And so memory is very tricky. It doesn't actually tell you what really happened. It's just this like make believe hallucination, and every time we remember something, it changes a bit. So I think memory is so fascinating when we rely on that to describe who we are, when in reality, it's just, it's like building a sandcastle, and every day it's washed away, and then you rebuild it thinking it's the same thing. And it's never the same thing. Our father passed away in 2007 from Hep C. And one of the symptoms of that disease that most people don't know is that when your liver isn't working properly, ammonia builds up in the brain. And it can create dementia-like symptoms. And so he was the smartest man I had ever known. All of a sudden, he didn't remember my name, or he didn't know who he was. And so, and I'm freshman year of college at this point, and I just remember thinking, okay, if he's not his memory and he's not his mind and he's still here, then who is he now? Like, and how have I been looking at him? How is my perception of him changing? And so the concept of identity and how it's trained has always been something that's really fascinated me. And then, of course, you throw LSD or psilocybin into the mix, you can typically have an experience where everything that you have built as you goes away. Maybe it's just a like split second, maybe it's an hour, but in that time period, when you come back to yourself, you start to question, well, okay, if I'm still living and breathing and Lindsay's way over there, then who am I? Like, and how much am I holding on to that belief? And how am I limiting myself by that, program? And, so like a lot of these questions come up. And so that was really something that I really wanted to explore in this book, like really get down into what makes us who we are, who do we think we are, and what happens when all of that goes away.
Interesting. And as you're answering that, it made me think about just MK Ultra in general and why are people so fascinated by it? I understand why you are, but just the pop culture seems to want to hold on to it. Is it because it's been a secret and remained hidden? Or is it because kind of like you were talking about there about maybe the potential to be someone else and potential to turn someone into someone that they don't know they are being as well, controlling?
Absolutely. There are so many like fascinating layers to this. And I think one of them is the fact that I think we're as a society, we're coming online to the idea that we really can't trust our government. Look at the Epstein files. There are things that are more recent that are coming out where we wouldn't have possibly believed that something could be true. And it's like, oh no, these things are really true. And so when we dig into the archives of, and this is the CIA's heyday. This is back before there was any type of oversight on anything at all. The crazy stories, and it's just like this tiny bit of what we actually know. It all, ties into what's happening today. It's like, okay, we know that these things are possible and we know that these things happen. And yet the storytelling around it keeps us confused, keeps us mad at each other, keeps us pointing fingers, but not pointing the blame at the people who are actually doing the wrongdoing. So the question also becomes, okay, maybe if LSD didn't work and mind control, maybe there are other things that are working right now, like media, like storytelling, like the way that we ingest information and what we do with it and how that impacts us. I think that's all really interesting. And then the other side of it for me is that MK Ultra is this really weird combination of, science and culture and government and power, because they were trying to control people's minds. That was really the goal. Like, can we create, super soldiers that we are 100% sure we can send into, battle and like won't end up spilling the beans about all of our, secrets and things like that. But they gave people LSD, which had the exact opposite effect. It created people who started questioning things way more than before. And so there's this really fascinating, Ken Kesey even thanked the CIA at one point while he was alive. He said, "Thank you, CIA, for creating all of this. Look what you did. Fantastic," which was, I'm pretty sure, not their goal. And so the idea that a substance which can have one intention for control can also be used for, liberation, I think that's also so interesting. Those, polar opposites were back in the, conversation around duality, because you can have a bad trip and you can be screwed up forever. And then the other side of that is that you can have a level of peace that you never knew was, possible, and a level of, inner freedom. And it's the exact same substance, just a completely different thing. And so, yeah, I think all of that is super fascinating.
Well, the next question has been on my mind since probably about page 20, 25 of the novel. You call yourself a psychedelic storyteller. So what are some of the landmark events that have helped shape you become the hallucinarator?
Awesome. Yeah. So we talked a bit about, Ken Kesey and going further. So, and if anyone hearing this wants to see the whole documentary, goingfurther.com, but further is spelled like the bus. So it's spelled incorrectly, FURTHUR.com. But that was my first major project is, and diving into psychedelic history and the, counterculture. That was back in 2014. As part of that movie, I went to Burning Man for the first time to film, because to me, Further was the first art car. Now we have Burning Man, which is all about these monster, ridiculous, creative, psychedelic cars. We ended up only using like 2 or 3 shots in the actual movie from Burning Man, but I had this amazing, like mind-blowing, life-changing week there. And so I made a documentary called Going Further with Burning Man. And then from there, things just kept going. I mean, I made a film with my twin sister. We have a production company called Lindsay Kent Films, and I made a short comedy called The Split, where my character, I act in it. I'm not an actor, but we did this because we were twins. My character takes ayahuasca, separates from her ego in a moment of total bliss and then wakes up and her ego is in her house. So my twin is, the one who plays my character's ego. We had a blast. And then I made a docuseries for Gaia TV called Plant Medicine, which is about a specific ayahuasca retreat center in Costa Rica. And so I have been, in between these worlds of documentary filmmaking and fiction. I'm starting to lean more into fiction because I find it more accessible, more entertaining, and more emotionally impactful when people can get behind a character and not be watching a documentary and thinking that I'm, pointing fingers about you and your, mental health or whatever it is. I think, documentaries, you already have to be interested in the concept. With, a thriller, you can just really like thrillers. And then inadvertently, you're learning about the psychedelic experience and the Renaissance and all of these things that are happening, but hopefully through a digestible, entertaining format, like broccoli on a pizza. That's kind of it. And the Hallucinarator brand, I started about this time last year. And it really started because I wanted to make more, I wanted to tell more stories about the women, the unsung hero women over the past 100 years and even earlier, that have made huge, impactful, inroads in the psychedelic conversation, that their stories were oppressed because of just where we are in our own story as a society. And so I talk about people like Rosemary Woodruff Leary and Marina Sabina on my channel, and I share a lot more, fun details about their lives and their work. And then I just keep the conversation going about my own experiences, the things that have changed my life, how my creativity has been impacted, what it's been like to, write a book, what some of my, favorite books are. And so, and I've had a really great response. People that I know that have never tried psychedelics and are really not interested are really curious about some of the things that I've learned and the things that have impacted me. So they say, okay, that helped you. Like, how can I access that same room, without drugs? I'm like, perfect, because there's a million different ways. You don't have to, right? So I've been having a ball with it. I'm really excited to see what's next when book 2 comes out next year. But yeah, that's me.
Coming from a film background, this being your first novel, what's something you learned about the creative process through writing this?
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is that the first draft can suck, and it can suck really bad. So when I'm editing a movie, the rough cut is still pretty polished. Like the very first time I'm pulling things into my edit and I'm putting the thing together, it tends to work. And so I would get stuck and get trapped in the idea that this first draft has to be a wonderful, coherent story. And in reality, no one else is going to read it. Just get it down. Just write every single day. And so that was I think the biggest aha moment for me was just sit down, set the alarm for 1 hour blocks several times a day, and just sit down and just write, and don't judge it until you're editing. Just let it be. And that really, really changed the game for me. I'm sure a lot of newbie writers have had this experience. And then what's interesting to me now is that the first book, I was more of a pantser than a plotter, because I'd already written it as a screenplay, and so I already had it in my mind. I just sat down and just started writing. Detective Schott came really easily to me. His experience with his wife, everything that he was dealing with, it was just in me. The second book, which takes place in the Brazilian Amazon, I did go there for research at the end of last year, but this is not my world. I have to do, it's a lot of deep, research that I'm doing for this project. And so I am outlining this book to hell. I mean, it is very, very, very structured at this point. And so the other side is, maybe I'm still learning my cadence. Maybe every book can be different. Maybe how I write the third book will be completely different than these ones, and just giving myself grace that the process can look different as long as I'm working on it every day.
What about confidence? Because I'm sure it's different if you're doing a documentary about other people. It's easier to talk about because you're just reporting. But when it's your own thoughts, there could be a little doubt of is anybody going to want to read this?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. And when you're making a film like I do, then you are following a story and you're shooting it and editing little sizzles and then making a pitch deck and then going out and trying to raise money while the story is happening and you're filming it, which is not something I recommend don't do this, people. It has worked for me a few times, but most of the time it doesn't. But you reach a certain point and then you take it to someone and say, is this good enough to be bought? Will you give me money to finish this? That's part of that, process of making a film, is you have to have money to finish it usually. With this, it's like I can completely finish this from end to end. Like the book is complete. Now it's just a matter of putting it out there and see if anyone is going to bother to read it. But at least I could finish it. And as a storyteller and as a creative person, that's really helped my mind, because I think a lot of people who have been struggling in this industry over the past few years, the hardest thing is not having your crew, not having your the ecosystem that you're used to, and then not being able to finish the things that you start because you just don't, like, everything is changing so fast, that less and less projects are actually getting the green light. And so it just felt really good to just do it. To just, even though it was very challenging and I'm like, no one may ever read this. I started it, I finished it, it's a book, it's done. And that felt really good.
And you're already elite for even having finished it, because I know starting it's easy. Anybody can start a book, but finishing a book is where it's at. There's a calming song that one of your characters sings to another character. And I was so thrilled that it was the Beatles. Why did you choose a calming song when you could have picked anything, especially when you're talking about psychedelics? Why did you choose the Beatles?
Yes, and that comes back to my dad. So my dad introduced me to the Beatles, and it was one of those experiences that that had a tremendous a tremendous impact on me as a person. Just my first intro to their music, and specifically the album Abbey Road. So maybe people don't know this, but there's about 6 tracks at the end of that album that were all recorded live in one go. So every song just bleeds into the next one. It is my favorite piece of music that exists. And a lot of that has to do with the memory that I have of my father, which is, music is one of those beautiful things that the memories, the tactile memories come back stronger. They play music for people who have dementia because it triggers a different part of the mind and can actually bring memories back for people who have spent a long time forgetting. And so for me, music was a big part of this book, and it will show up in all 4 of these books because psychedelics and music are best friends. But it also has to do with memory and the relationship to that. So Sun King is my favorite song of that medley at the end of Abbey Road. And so the relationship that Schott has with his wife, where he keeps trying to bring her back from the brink. She has catatonic PTSD. Most days she doesn't remember. She doesn't know where she is, and she's really suffering. And so when he can sing to her and he can calm her, then he feels more connected to her. And so that became something that was powerful and a big part of this book.
Fantastic. Well, we have 3 more books after this, but I know you're not someone who only does one project at a time. So what else are you working on for 2026 and beyond?
Yes. So the biggest thing I'm working on besides My Twin the Witch, which is book 2, is I'm developing a feature film with my twin sister, who is an award-winning screenwriter. She has a couple projects in the works that have directors attached, but her and I are co-directing this one because it's a very deeply personal project. Now, I mentioned how we're, oil and water, very different people. I'm like the happy, bubbly, shiny rainbow twin, and she is the true crime, murder, horror twin. So I digitized our home movies as a gift for her. And she watched them and thought this would make a great horror movie. And so she wrote a screenplay. It's a black satire horror movie. It kind of has the same tone as The Menu, but it's about the New York art scene. But basically the found footage part of this horror movie are our actual home movies, which are not acting. Which kind of makes it totally creepy. She was absolutely right. It works really well and also helps keep costs down. But it's a wonderful, wonderful script. So we're in the process of getting that going. Our goal is to start filming that by Q4 of this year. And the one docu-series that I'm working on right now, I was just in Norway filming the pilot for this. It's called Art Under Pressure. And the idea is, when societies shift, artists feel it first. And I think at a time when in our culture we're dealing with gentrification and AI and climate change, I think a lot of different cultures around the world are dealing with those same issues differently. And so we got to meet this incredible indigenous community of artists in Sapmi, which is it spans 3 countries up in the Arctic Circle, but they're basically reindeer herders who are now figuring out how to adapt in the modern times and keeping their culture alive and their children interested in continuing this culture in different ways, like through video games, through jewelry, and in all these really exciting ways. And so we shot the pilot. We're in the process of pitching that. Fingers crossed that becomes a show, because travel is also my soul food. I would love to be able to travel around the world and meet other artists doing amazing things. So those are the biggest ones right now that are on my plate.
Wonderful. When I was looking on the map of where you're at, I had to keep zooming out. You were so far north that I had to keep zooming out so much. I'm like, where is she? So
there was no nighttime. It was my first time in a country where there was no night. It was like the first day of no, like 0 minutes of nighttime. And I was looking out the window at 3 a.m. I'm going, this is so surreal. the sun just goes down to the horizon and then back up again. Such a trip. 57 days of daylight, of straight daylight in Alta, Norway. It's a wild place. But if you ever want to go see the Northern Lights, that's the place to do it. That's what I heard. It is the best. Yeah, it's on my list. Yeah, this was really fun. You asked some really fun ones too.
Well, I admire that you're thinking so far in the future, and just congratulations on a novel. This is fantastic.
Thank you,
what a great time of your life. I hope you savor every second of it.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck. I hope we talk again. We'll talk again next year for the next book.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Much appreciation to Lindsay. Pick up her new novel, My Twin the Murderer. It's out now. Everyone has a story. Each person a scholar. Thank you for listening. Fill up that passport. I'll see you on the road. Aviento.